Welcome to the conversation series for the BU Players production of the screenplays. This is an opportunity for you to listen in on some conversations between playwrights, directors, dramaturgs, and designers about how the productions came to be and where they might go.
Before the submission deadline, all playwrights interested in submitting a script for consideration at the screenplays was invited to take part in a pre-production dramaturgy process. So they submitted scripts early before that posted deadline and allowed a team of student dramaturgs to read that script and to provide some feedback on their current draft. The student dramaturgs then also hosted some workshop sessions where the playwrights were invited to come and we read scripts out loud. We talked through ideas for revisions and ways that the playwrights might see their script developing as we neared the submission deadline. After the submissions were received and the student plays were selected for inclusion in the screenplays, we also had some student dramaturgs stay on the project and work with the playwrights and teams in the rehearsal process as a way to continue to support the playwrights as they develop their script and to provide some dramaturgical guidance to the teams as they develop these plays for the recorded productions.
We also invited student designers into the process, and rather than limit them to a single design area like scenery or costumes, we gave one designer each a show and called them production designers. We allowed them to have a bit of freedom in terms of where they would create and how they would work to support the playwright's vision for the play. Some of them were involved in creating and helping to create what you saw as part of the recorded conversations. Others did that and expanded what this play might look like if it were brought to a larger stage, a more rounded production with more expansive production values. Their work and the work of all the students on this production was supported by our shops as well. I'm standing in our scene shop where our scene shop coordinator fabricated the blue screens that were used behind the actors. Our costume shop coordinator also helped us find costume pieces that didn't exist in the closets of the individual actors that were cast into the show.
So now we invite you to lean in and listen to the conversation series.
Well, hello there, Max and Kirsten, and hello to everyone at home joining us for our first conversation about the first day conundrum. So as the director of the show, I'm happy to now serve as moderator so we can get to know our playwright and our designer a little bit better. So let's start with you, Kirsten. What inspired you to write this play?
My biggest inspiration for this play was stepping out of my comfort zone, honestly. This whole semester for me was about doing something I normally wouldn't do or take a class I wouldn't normally take and challenge myself. So when I heard that we were doing this instead of like an actual in-person stage production, I thought, you know what, why not? If I write something great and they like it, then they like it. And if not, at least I tried it and know that I tried it. So yeah.
Yeah, good for you, stepping out of that comfort zone. So how did it feel to have actors and me as the director analyzing your words?
It was a little bit strange at first. We got to talking and I was like, well, this play seems simple enough. It seems like pretty straightforward characters. And then we started analyzing it and digging into all these layers. And I was like, oh, did I actually write that in there? That's pretty cool. I didn't know I did that.
Fun. And Max, let's hear from you. What did you find to be the most exciting and or interesting part of the process being designer on this play?
I would say the most interesting and exciting part about being the designer is, oh gosh, the characters come across, they seem like such opposites, but when you kind of strip that down, there's a lot of each other that they kind of carry with them. And it was really interesting to see things that came to me as impulses, sharing them with the two of you and with our actors, and having Julie, you as the director, say things like, oh, that works really great for these 3 reasons that I hadn't even like thought of. Like, that was really exciting to me personally, to feel like I was doing a good job. Yeah.
And indeed you were. And I know you brought a slide for us today.
I
So
do
I'm
have
excited to look at that. Yeah, great. Let's pull that up.
Yeah, so on this slide, I just kind of put some of the things that were part of the design that I felt like were maybe the most important ones. One of the things that I thought was most exciting that we talked about during rehearsal was when, Julie, you made the analysis that when Rory holds this pen, he's holding Jody, like that is like represented there in that prop. So that to me was the most exciting development that came from my designs. And like adding these smaller details to sort of like bring out the personalities, like going with warm colors for Jody, cool colors for Rory, and then tying them in together with like some red, with the red wine and the red pin. Was all just so much fun and such a great experience. And I'm so glad that I got to share this with you guys, and that it turned out with something that we were all, I think, happy with.
Definitely happy with it. And tell us about how you got inspired to choose that particular pen, because it's such a fun item.
It came just sort of like as an impulse, because Rory reminded me sort of the people that I was friends with in high school that were really into fandoms and Comic-Con nerd culture and things like that. So when he was talking about this lucky pen, I thought about someone I knew in high school who always wrote with a sonic screwdriver pen, like a Doctor Who sonic screwdriver pen. And that was first an impulse, and I was so glad that you guys liked it. And we went with this one because there are 13 different versions of this exact same item, to go with his color scheme. And it ended up coming out, I think, really well, staying with his color scheme, but also like popping out against his clothing and not blending in. So I'm very happy with what we ended up with.
Me too. And I think that we all know someone who's a little bit like a Rory or a Jody, which is a lot of fun. So Kirsten, for you, as we look at these images here, what about the design process informed your understanding of the play or helped you understand your characters at a deeper level?
I think after seeing the design, it made me realize just how opposite these two characters are, but they fit so well together. Like with the red wine and the red pen, you see a little bit of each other in their own personality. So the costumes just really made their personality come out more for me.
Good, great. And switching gears a little bit, Max, what did you find to be the most challenging part of the design process?
Okay. What I found to be most challenging, this process for this show was the first time I was like leading my own design. Like I've done assistant designing before, but this one I was like lead designer for this production. And what I found really difficult was taking the ideas and actually fabricating them. Like I've never had that be something that I had to do before, like that be part of my role before. So finding these things that like felt like what I wanted, staying in budget, getting them from the right seller, getting them shipped on time, like lining all that up, I struggled with for like, that was like a week long part where I was like struggling with that. So that was, I think, the hardest for me, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, big dreams, little budget.
Yes.
But we appreciated your donation of the love pin there. For your
yeah, no problem.
Okay. Yeah, it did make a nice detail tying in that red color from the wine glass. So it really added a lot.
Thank you.
So Kirsten, what did you learn about playwriting through the revision process?
that it takes a long time to get to where you started to the end product. I learned that through a change of like one stage direction, it could change the whole feel of the play, or changing one word could change the way a character feels. And I didn't necessarily realize that when I was writing it. It just sort of, when I first started, I was just writing what came to me. And then after going through and reading it and analyzing it and being like, that might not be the right word, it felt like a more cohesive play.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was fascinating to watch the changes that occurred as words or lines were added. And even when we changed the time through, as you updated it and added the idea of winter going into spring, we were able to go, oh gosh, even that's perfect, because it's the metaphor of Rory finally blooming into the adult world of dating.
Yeah.
So that was fun. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for our conversation. And it was a great experience working with both of you. So hope there's another time down the road.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this conversation about gummy bear shots. And I'm going to just jump right in, Callie, with a question for you. You probably know I'm a big fan of origin stories, theater history nerd. So I would love to know and have you kind of share with everyone, what is the origin story for gummy bear shots? What inspired the play? How did the play come to be for you?
Yeah, so it just kind of started with the original idea of like the screenplays first came out, and I saw that we were doing something new, something virtual with everything going on, and I had always wanted to be a playwright, so I was like, this seems like a perfect opportunity, for me to jump at all of the so many resources that this university offers us to like branch out and try like so many different things. So I was like, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try something new. This is something that I care about. And so I went for it. And this story comes from just like everyday life. This is stuff that you see all the time. This is, given, the state of the world, there are so many people that go through these things every single day that, are too scared to speak up about certain topics because of their opinions and things. And I don't know, I'm a big fan of truth. So I like bringing honesty to stories. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I have to just say, as like a director on the project, that I've really enjoyed getting to work with you in this new capacity, right? You and I have worked on a couple of shows as director and performer. And I know, we joked about like, even during casting, it was fun to sit on the same side of the table, so it's just been a real joy. So you mentioned kind of like the resources and the process, and I know that you did kind of take part in the early dramaturgy kind of workshopping that we offered as a part of the screenplays, right? Where you got to connect with some student dramaturgs, and I was wondering if you would share a little bit just about that early kind of stage of development and how you saw the play shift and change, or just what that part of the process was, as a little bit of insight for our listeners.
Oh my goodness, yes. So when I had first found out that, we were doing something like this, I was really excited because, it's something brand new. It's something, that we're trying out, and it's really exciting, So I wanted to jump at every given opportunity that we had. So, you guys offered feedback, and I took every single bit that I could. So the way that my sort of like process works is I like to do like an outline kind of. So I just word vomited everything that came to mind, and I sent it out, and I sent it to you guys and I was like, does this sound like it could be a good idea? And then I just kept communicating back and forth until my ideas sort of started to make sense. And I honestly don't think that like the play would have been what it is right now without having that sort of feedback and those resources, because I honestly think that I sent it back, like sent it between us maybe 3 or 4 times before the final submission. And then once it got chosen for the screenplays, I think we've sent it back and forth so much more. But yeah, it honestly like completely changed. So it's just having those resources is so helpful. Like completely changed the course of the play.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, I think that's such an important thing. Again, like for us to get to share a bit about, right? Like if you haven't done a lot of new play development, but that idea that the script really was shifting kind of throughout much of this process, right? Which shapes, you know, everything that everyone is doing. And that's kind of a beautiful segue actually for me to bring Reagan, you know, into the conversation, because Reagan, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you approach the process as a designer. And I think with that notion, we were kind of sharing new drafts of scripts, you know, throughout this process. So can you talk just a little bit about like how you approached your role for a designer, you know, for Gummy Bear Shots within the kind of context of the new play development and the screenplays as a festival?
Yeah, of course. So when I got the position, I originally just kind of read straight through the play, and then I just kept reading it, and then I was like creating images in my head of what I thought. Like I really focused on like costume design and stuff, like things that I could still maybe work with, like in just the nature of how our plays are being performed. So I just read it a lot, and then I started like thinking about what these characters would wear, and I just started kind of like, instead of word vomiting, I was like photo vomiting collages together, and then just kind of created these images, and then yeah.
Awesome. I love that both so much, like our own language vocabularies, right? Of
brain.
Yeah, exactly. Of putting stuff out there through words, putting stuff out there through imagery. And I think a connection too between those, right? So Callie, I remember us having a pretty fun conversation after we really, I think, started to think about the design in a more concrete way, right? And like the specific choices that we were going to have, particularly I think our actors help us with in terms of costuming and makeup and hair. So I wanted to ask, you know, as you watched kind of those pieces get added, you know, through the process, how did that shape the play? Starting to kind of see the characters materialized through design. Did it like shape the play? Is it going to lead to revision? Like, you know, what is it that came out of that, you think, for you?
So just watching like our actors like grow through this process and just like create like the story out of this and their own version of the story is just like such a unique thing to see, especially from my side of like this perspective, like being the playwright this time, because as an actor, you know, I'm used to having to create my own version of what the playwright has written, but I've never seen it from this side. And so some of the like the characters I've written them in a way of like how I think they are, but then once the rehearsal process started, the actors started like putting their own personal spin on things and like taking things in their own direction. And I just have seen these characters grow so much and change. And specifically in the character of Britt, it's just that Becca herself is just so wonderful. And like the way that like she's taken the direction of the character has like completely opened a different avenue for me to even like see like a different personality of this character that's even like a different avenue that I didn't even think of. Like she can still be the same person but have like 2 different, you know, sides. And I love that because, you know, I never would have thought about that without having, you know, her sort of versatile acting skills to sort of bring that all in. So
yeah.
thank you to her for that. But
shout out to Rebecca Thomas.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I know we talked about that kind of so much, right, through this journey. Like, how do we honor, each of these characters, right, all three of them in terms of their complexity, in terms of the way that they perform, different sides of themselves, and that idea of perform in the sense of performance in everyday life, right? Like that we all maybe shift our self-presentation, based on who we're talking to and what our relationship is with that person. And I really agree. I feel like the actors, it was such a joy for me to watch them kind of navigate different aspects, right, of each of these characters, and to kind of mine the complexities of them, and to play, just as we found our way to that. So awesome. Thank you. Great. Let's kind of head, I think, towards kind of closure a little bit of the conversation, but I would love to just ask from each of you, just like curious over here on my end, what do you think for you was the most kind of interesting part of this process as a whole? Like, is there something specific that jumps out? What was most interesting?
Oh, this is hard. Oh man. Reagan, you go first. I got to think about it.
I was gonna say, for me as like the designer, I think it was like the aspect of just like the collaboration, and how we had a chat early on about like being very open, like with the designing and the costumes, and like, so I just threw out ideas and like generally, and then we worked with the actors and just kind of with what they had, and that was very new and interesting aspect, because normally, in a non-coronavirus world, we would be like making the costumes very specifically, picking them out. So it's really fun to have like that extra collaboration aspect and openness to the whole thing.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
So I guess for me, going into it, my expectation was just like to soak everything up, like to be a sponge, because this is my first time even working on like new play development. So and especially this is my first time even being like a playwright. So I just wanted to like learn everything. But if I had to pick one specific moment, there was a time in rehearsal where it just seemed to like click. Like it just seemed like we were trucking through, and everyone was just having fun. And you actually gave a direction, and it was like, amp it up to 10, just like pretend it's not rehearsal, just have fun, like you're just hanging out with your friends. And I was just sitting here listening and, swinging back and forth in my desk chair, and I was taking notes in my little book, and I just like looked up, and I remember thinking like, wow, like this is it. Like that's just, it sunk in for me, and I, it just really was like full circle. I was like, wow, like, even though things are a lot different now, it doesn't necessarily mean that like we're losing our art in a sense. Like we're still creating, it's just in different ways, and it's still productive, and it's still, it's still fulfilling.
Yeah, no, I thank you so much for sharing that, because I recall that night myself, and I really agree, right? I think we were all so present and doing kind of bringing what we could, to the process. But I agree with you. There was a bit of almost like learning how to find the same type of energy, that we get to kind of have in an embodied rehearsal process through the screens, and it took a little time, but I totally agree with like the celebratory feeling of that. I think it was like fourth rehearsal, maybe, like finally feeling like we'd found a bit more, we've relaxed into it, in a new way. And that it just kind of kept going and growing from there. So awesome. Well, thank you both so much, for just having this conversation, getting to share a little bit more about what goes on kind of behind the process. And appreciate everyone for tuning in and learning more about gummy bear shots.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you for coming to the creative conversation on the Spinanigans of Holden Hunt and Jace Jones, The Past of Spyrus. I'm here with my two pals, the production designer and the playwright. And we're going to jump into a little conversation about how this came to be and how we got here on the screen before you. So first, we're going to talk about what inspired the play.
There was so much that went into this play and conceiving it from the beginning. The idea of doing something about spies really just stuck with me. In all honesty, I didn't want to write this play at first, but the idea just wouldn't leave my head, and I sort of went, well, screw practicality of it, let's write a play about spies. And so a lot of the inspiration comes from like James Bond and the sort of Hollywood cliche of what a spy is. And a lot of it also came from that era of the spy films. So it's very old Hollywood, which Sarah was lovely enough to incorporate in a lot of her designs. And, you know, every character obviously comes from somewhere different. But Bree, I think, is the general favorite character of this show. She came actually a lot from like 80s erotic thrillers, which I feel like is kind of a weird pull to base a character off of, especially for someone born in the year 2000 to base a character off of. But I've always loved the power in the femininity of those characters, and they sort of defied the typical masculine power that was pretty prominent in their era and also in the eras before them, and also still in our era today. But the power that they hold in not compromising who they are as women to get what they want, albeit not great things that they want. You know, we see that in Bree too. You know, her ultimate goal is to release a virus on the world, which is objectively not the best thing, but we see her reason for it, and it gives this weird sort of sense of compassion in which we're saying, okay, you know, you're not doing a good thing, but you're doing a bad thing for the right reason.
Okay, gotta take down that patriarchy, you know?
Oh yeah.
Thing. Okay, so then we're going to move on to talking a little bit about the process in the play from your perspective. So what about the design process informed your understanding of the play?
Okay, well, I had known about this play for the whole time Sam had been working on it. She had told me about it. She'd been like, we're doing this thing, and I already wrote this play, and it's about spies. And I was like, I love spies. This is going to be so cool. And then when I figured out that I was designing for it, I was so excited. And so like when I heard that like old Hollywood and stuff was like a big inspiration, I was like, yes, I'm going to put this in. I'm not sure exactly how yet, but I'm going to incorporate it. And I used that inspired the costumes very, very heavily for the show. I looked at actors and actresses from the era, and I was like, these are great. All of this happening here, this is the vibe that I would want this show to have.
Yeah, definitely. And Sam, did you have any comments on how the design process informed your understanding of your own play?
Yeah, Sarah and I got to work really closely together on the design of this. I would get texts from her at the height of her working on this probably twice a day. I would get stuff from her being like, can you look at this? And I think just being able to have someone to talk through that aspect of the play with was so helpful. And I could really see what parts of the play were really inspired by that old Hollywood aesthetic.
Yeah, definitely. So jumping in, this is kind of like a roundtable discussion sort of deal, but what did you find most interesting in the process of working on this play? If anybody wants to jump in, I know we all definitely have an opinion, and we all definitely have, what this looked like.
For me, it was figuring out how to design for a show that was written to be in a digital format. Because when I started designing, I made the decision, yes, this is meant to take place over Zoom, but I want to design it like it's on a stage. So I made a set that I also is not the set is not meant to look real necessarily, and it's not doesn't look, I don't think, like it is meant to be in the 21st century. I made the decision not to have computers and just to have chairs sitting on the stage, to sort of give that illusion that these characters, who are all looking vaguely forward, have computers in front of them, and they are talking into computers. They're not looking face to face. Yeah.
And I love that you did that, Sarah, because I think it really pushes the message that they really are talking to the audience. You know, in the play, they're talking to each other, but Bree is saying these things to who are essentially the embodiment of the U.S. government. And, you know, she's really talking to the people, right? She's mad at the world and she didn't know what to do. So this is what she came to. And that anger and that frustration, she's not just talking to Jason Holden. She's talking to the audience, the people who are watching the play. And I love that you incorporated that into your design.
Yeah, I think going off of both of your comments, I think that, as a most interesting part for me had to be like, it was almost like, how am I going to approach this where their faces are just going to be like this, and how do we make it the most authentic it can be? And I think that diving into that process was definitely daunting, but nonetheless exciting. And yeah, definitely there's many interesting parts, but that was most, right? Like, how do we make it look the most authentic it can look via Zoom? That's where we did our rehearsals, and then to come to this platform to do the recording. So okay, and then a counterpart to that is, what did you find the most challenging during the process of working on this play? So whoever wants to. I also know we all have challenges too, just given the given the circumstances.
I guess I can go. That's fine. So once I figured out what the general concept was for my design, I really struggled finding lighting that I liked for the set that I had created and the show as a whole, to embody the vibe Sam did so well creating in the script, and Lindsay was doing so well creating in the directing of the actors. I spent hours creating different looks and then redoing them and sending them to Lindsay and Sam and being like, I don't like any of this. And then they would give me little suggestions and I would try and make it better until Sam, I probably spent 5-10 hours just trying to figure out something. I spent an entire night, and then I kept changing it after that until I came to my final sort of lighting look that I like a lot now, especially. The more I sort of look at it, the more my final look just feels right and fits the vibe, I think, really well.
Yeah, I think receiving those texts at all hours of the night really showed your passion for this sort of thing.
I just like lights.
Absolutely, and you know what? We got the vibe, and yeah. So that doesn't go to show how deeply committed all of us were, because we're all answering at 3-4 o'clock in the morning because we were just so invested. Yeah, I think a challenge with this was getting to know the actors. Fortunately, two 2 of our actors were people that we had already worked with on projects, but we did, and then so 3 with the stage directions, and then 1 person was completely new. And so, right, building a relationship to be able to like give constructive criticism and to be able to, work with that person without really knowing them was very difficult over Zoom. And I think that was Sam and I, we did a lot of the rehearsal process together, and Sarah was there as well, but we did a lot of the interaction. And that to me was the biggest challenge, was how do I make this actor feel comfortable? How do I not make them want to run away and quit, even though we have a task? And so I think it was definitely a process, and that to me was the most challenging part.
Yeah, I would agree with that as someone who was there for all of those rehearsals. And also just the timeline that we had. These were so condensed, and I'm so proud of everyone who worked on this show. The actors did a great job. Lindsay, you did an amazing job directing them. Sarah, your production design is magnificent. And just so a huge shout out to everyone who worked their butts off trying to get this done in the minimal amount of time we had.
Yeah, I actually remember something I said often, and Sam and Sarah probably hear it in their sleep at this point. In the memorization of the lines, I was like, I know it's going to be challenging. I myself have never spent time on stage. Well, I mean, like I have, but not recently and not much. And so I was like, learning these lines must be so difficult without actual real blocking. And I must have said that every rehearsal, because I just wanted them to understand, and that we understand that it is, that this is not an easy thing that they're doing. And I agree that they all despite the challenges, they all did a really great job taking it on and embodying this life we have now and creating art regardless. So let's talk about what did you learn about the play through the rehearsal process with the actors? Because that, it went from words to spoken word.
And this is going to be such a writer response from me, but just being able to hear it out loud, it really told me what didn't work in the play and in the writing. There were some parts that were repetitive. I think, and Lindsay, you pointed this out in one of the rehearsals, there was a point where I wrote the wrong name in one of the dialogue chunks. And just being able to hear all of the characters outside of my own head and really be able to step back from it and look at it more objectively. And okay, this is my work. This is art that I wrote. But it's not perfect, and we're gonna get as close to perfect as we can, and that aspect of just the outside voices really helped.
Yeah, I definitely got the nuances of the play more, because I can read it as many times as I want, but hearing the different actors saying it out loud, the meaning all hits much harder, and you see the characters and who they are so much more when someone's actually performing it. And it just really informed me about the play.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, to speak as an, right, so not a designer and not the writer, but the director, it definitely, to watch this experience come alive and to watch the play mold and form into what it became was truly an experience that I'm grateful for. And yeah, so that wraps it up for our little conversation, get to know the people behind the scenes, creative talk. I want to thank you again for sitting in the comfort of your own homes and watching what we continue to do despite the COVID crazy times. And we hope you enjoyed all of our shows. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Eliana Tate, and I am the dramaturg for post-audition, and I will be moderating this conversation and guiding it along. So to get started, Brian, would you like to tell us about what inspired you to create this piece?
Of course. It all started with, of course, the caveat being, the kind of like the theme, I guess, would be like digital communication and such like that. So immediately that got me thinking of like, how imaginative should I be, or how like grounded should I be, and like throwing all these ideas together. And in the process, I realized the whole digital communication thing is because of COVID. That got me thinking of a friend of mine who was in high school during when COVID was coming up, and he was in Beauty and the Beast. And he had got his first lead role as Gaston. He was so excited to do the play and all that, the musical. However, due to COVID, the musical got canceled, and that kind of hit him hard along with the rest of the cast. And that was kind of like where I started, because I kind of wanted to play off of that. And then it became a thing of, I don't feel like that's enough. So then me, for anyone that knows me, both in Williamsport, where I'm from, and wherever I go, I'm a speaker on social issues, one of which being racism. So I kind of mashed these two pretty different ideas together, and it turned into what is now post-audition, with these characters, 2 white and 1 black, and having these subtle ideas that some people might have, and them maybe being a problem, especially this day and age, which I feel like for the past, well, you can say ever since the United States began, racism has always been an issue. And it just transformed and transformed. And at the end, of course, the play is canceled, which is homage to my original reference. So it's all these ideas coming together to make one whole piece.
So after you had created post-audition, how did your understanding of your own play change, evolve, or deepen in the pre-rehearsal process working with me, the dramaturg, and David, the director?
It was extremely nice to have other minds coming together on this, because when I was by myself and doing revisions, I didn't really have anyone to like bounce off of to be like, is this going to work better, or is this going to work better? So I was just like putting everything out on a limb. But once I got people to work with, I was finally able to reflect my ideas off of other people, and then really think about if that works in the context of what I'm trying to put out there. Like a lot of things was like, what is my goal of this play? And both you, Eliana, and you, David, very much helped that a lot. So it definitely transformed a pretty drastic amount once I had the help of you two.
So similar question for you, David. What new perspectives on this story did you find once the rehearsal process began with actors?
Well, I think maybe taking that from Brian, the idea of, the helpfulness, I think, of illuminating the script is really great. I think working with actors. So for me, it was all about the why, because I think a lot of times in plays, new plays, old plays, the objective of the character, the thing that they want, the thing they're trying to do can be clear, but the motivation may be something to mine. So I think that was my biggest thing in rehearsal, was trying to find out why Violet does what she does, why Cooper does what he does, why Dee does what he does, and or what these characters don't do as well. And that was what was really great about, I think, trying to figure out the story from the mind of the characters, from the point of view of the characters. And since actors are so good at that, I knew that was going to be really helpful in illuminating to Brian how an actor might approach those characters. What are the clues that he's already giving to actors, and are they following them, or are they clear paths? And then what are they going to create from their imagination as well? And I think certainly that in terms of new perspectives on the story, it was really trying to find out, even down to the notes during our performance, like we did, was okay, so Cooper, what does Cooper understand about what he's saying, and what does he not understand, and how does that make him and a character who we can still identify with, even if he's making some choices that we would hope that we would not make in our life, if that's That's a way to say it.
Yeah. One of the things I really love so much about the show is just how layered all of the messages are. But I think the message that has remained the most poignant for me across the whole development process is that our words can be so incredibly hurtful and divisive, even if we didn't intend for them to be. We always hear things like our actions speak louder than words, and sticks and stones, etc. But in this time where the vast majority of the interactions we have with our friends and with strangers is through some virtual medium, it's just so imperative to remember how consequential our words can be. I remember back towards the beginning of this process, we had briefly talked about how this story could have ended differently if the characters were together physically as opposed to separated through their screens. And yeah, so especially in this time where we're interacting with the people we care about and the people we want to care about through screens, it's just so important to remember the message that our words carry real weight. So Brian, back to you. What did you find the most challenging during the process of working on this play?
For sure, it was making every character, like, I guess the words I'm going to use is balanced out. For example, Cooper, I didn't want to make him an overly racist person that we all hate, because that is not my goal for that character at all. And even for character like Violet, is making her, of course, she's the middle ground, but not making her irrelevant, because she's very much crucial in the context of the play. And for Dante, just making him have enough reason to fight back, and he definitely has more than enough. So that definitely, the characterization of the characters is definitely, I think, the most challenging. And just developing everything together and really finding a beginning, a middle, and the end, so you can really pinpoint where the story goes from here to here to here, and you're starting to like realize in your head why these things are happening and why they're happening for a reason, all the way up to the culminating point where one of my main goals is to leave the audience thinking of maybe what comes next. What would I have done in that situation? All these questions that I want audience to keep on thinking. So having to portray that message and having to do my best to get an audience to really think, that was also very challenging to process.
So David, how does working directly with the playwright shape and influence the way you direct a show? And how did that specifically impact how you directed post-audition?
Sure. For me, I always feel like I'm working with the playwright, even when it's not a new play. I think that's just one of the values that I have of trying to really understand, in particular, the intent of the playwright. So when I'm working on a play that's not necessarily new, I will do a lot of research and try to find out what the playwright said about their play or about their work as much as possible, so I can understand that and then really try to carry that through into the production. So of course, with the opportunity to work on a new play and to work with Brian on this, the main influence, I think, is asking those same questions. Well, what do you intend with this play, right? You know, what do you hope for this play? What do you fear about this play? And what do you hope is the impact it's going to have on the audience? How are we left at the end of the story? And as Brian was just saying with Cooper, about trying to understand kind of that he is, I don't know, like you're saying, the layer, there's layers to him, that it's not necessarily just a straight up intentional, certainly not intentional things that he's doing. And by the end of the play, that we're hopefully left wondering what will happen to this friendship. And that was one of the things that Brian said from early on, that we should wonder what's going to happen to the friendship, not know precisely what's going to happen to the friendship. So that was something that really guided me in rehearsal, to make sure that the actors were also exploring that, like what does happen next, and making sure that they were also thinking about the possible ambiguities. And it's interesting, actually, that Eliana, you were talking about that you know, being, they're not going to see each other necessarily the next day on campus if their school is about to be shut down, right? And so if these things are said right before they're just disconnected from one another, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough to mend that relationship, or the relationship between all three of them. So I think that answers your question.
Well, speaking of intentions, hopes, and fears, Brian, what are you hoping for audiences to take away from this performance?
Oh, it goes back to, it's not anything I want them to take away specifically. What I want them to take away is if they can keep on thinking about what had happened, and then think about that perhaps in their daily life. If they perhaps hear some of these things and don't think about it enough, see some of these things and they just pass it off. To get people to be more aware about these topics of racism, that I know that does better for everybody in the world. So just to have the audience to keep on thinking about what had transpired, not only at the end of the show, but throughout the entire show. Because if you really look back and watch it again, or really sit down and think about it, I like to say there's a lot to dig into for each individual part of the play.
We've got just a little bit of time left, so I'll pose this question to anyone. But what about this production made you excited to keep coming to rehearsals every day?
I'm happy to answer that. And then
I'll get some of them.
Great.
I was just really excited because I have been a playwright in the past, and I have also been a director for every time I was a playwright. But this is the first time where my own work was being directed by someone else. So being able to sit down and not have to be so directive about every little thing, instead being able to watch and see how things develop, was just so interesting to me, and definitely helps me not only as a playwright but also as a director in the future. So just being able to see these characters develop and the story develop, and see these small things added in, some of these things taken out, and getting me to think, you know what, yeah, that actually works, and I would have never thought of that. So just being able to come to rehearsal every day and see everything develop was just very fascinating to me, and definitely made me excited.
And mine's maybe kind of almost the same answer, but it's from the other perspective, the fact that I really love, especially just working on new plays, but the knowing that Brian was there, even if he wasn't speaking much during the rehearsal process, because he was watching and just taking what he could from that, was the fact that every time I asked an actor a question or gave a piece of direction for them to try something out, I knew that Brian was seeing just a different angle on that moment, on that character, and a lot of times I would give that direction just to push and pull, so that Brian could kind of see these different possibilities from within the things that he already said that he was hoping to achieve, and just seeing the kind of spectrum. And I think that was really satisfying, and having the three of us check in after rehearsal, and that one of us would say, hey, let's just hang out and talk a little bit about this moment or this line or this thing that we're exploring, or we tried out some new dialogue and check in about how that went for us. It was really satisfying.
Yeah, for me, on just a surface level, I haven't done a show in a little over 10 months, and so just getting to be a part of a creative process was always made me very excited for rehearsals. But this is my first time doing any sort of dramaturgy and learning about the dramaturgical process, and I have thoroughly enjoyed that, and that made me really enthusiastic about going to rehearsals every night. But being a part of a script that just feels so relevant and important was also really energizing. So all of those things for me made me excited every night for this.
That's great.
Well, that's all I have. So thank you both, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. I have some questions for you regarding rehearsal and design processes for the proposition. So the first question is for everybody. what did you find most interesting while working on this project? Anyone who's willing to answer.
I guess. Oh.
No, please go, Reagan.
I guess I think for me, just working with a bunch of new people in the program was something super interesting, and kind of seeing everyone come together in a super unique way. And for me, just having everyone in the rehearsal room was an absolute gift, and everyone was able to bounce off each other really well. And that's really what interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say. I was just going to say that everyone on this team worked like freakishly well together. Like normally there's like hiccups or like not super big, but there's always like little things that you have to get over to make sure that a show is what you want it to be. And I feel like, yeah, maybe we had little tiny minute things like that happen, but overall we as a team like went into this and we were like, oh, yes, like this works. Like we all work well together. We all think similarly. Like we know what we're doing and we know how to get it done. It was so nice. It was so refreshing because you don't always get that it's kind of unique, and it was fun to work with in a group like that.
Yeah, I guess I would say the collaboration. I mean, like some of the people here I've obviously worked with before, but getting to work with new people is always it's always fun and it's exciting. It's getting to, see different points of view and different perspectives on things that you had never like thought to look that way before, or like just throwing ideas like into a group chat and we're like, hey, what do we think about this? What do we think about that? Just like in constant communication. And yeah, and I mean, it helps that, we all get along really well. So
And I would say this is kind of my first time with this whole experience of, playwriting and all that. It was it was pleasantly surprising how simple things were and how easy it was to get along with everybody and have things work out properly. It's just, the benefits of a good group, I would say.
Yeah, you got lucky.
I did.
I forget that this is your first time doing something like this. And I'm like, wow, he really lucked out because this went well.
Yeah, that is kind of another question I had for you, Sebastian, is how did it feel kind of diving into the world of theater for the first time?
Oh, well, it was stressful, I would say, but very rewarding. It was nice to see, I guess actually for me, at least, this is the first time I've seen something that I've written kind of come to life like this. And it was fantastic. It was stressful, and it was, there were some rough periods. There were some periods where I was like, I don't know how this is going to go, but in the end, it all worked out very, very well. Again, pleasantly surprising.
Excellent. My next question is for the designers. What was your first response to reading the play?
Oh my gosh. Because I know Sebastian from outside of theater. Like we are friends outside of the theater department. He's one of the few friends I have outside of the theater department. So when I found out that I was working on his show and then I finally got to read the script, I was so excited. Because like I know how Sebastian thinks. I know his like narrative storytelling, the way that he does that. And so to read a play by him was just so exciting. And then when I found out it was about like future cowboys and like a Western motif, I was like, yes, 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 yes. I was so excited to work on this show, and reading the script was so exciting. And I don't often read scripts and get like super duper excited and feel super fulfilled by them just upon reading them. And I was elated after reading the script for the first time. So it was so exciting for me, at least.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. I mean, I remember, so Sebastian and I were in playwriting class together, and that's where we first met. And we had like an assignment or something. And I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I really liked your work. And he was like, thanks, I liked yours too. Like, I'll read it, And we were just communicating back and forth, and then we ended up being like placed to work together on this. And I was like, wow, how convenient, that we both like each other's work. Super great.
Small world, right?
Yeah, right. And it even happened to be this show too. So perfect, incredible, phenomenal. but yeah, just reading the show. Oh my gosh. I remember when we did it in class and just and like just seeing it change now, like from where it started in class to where it is now. It's just it warms my heart.
That's actually a pretty good segue. Sebastian, what about the process for rehearsals, my work with you, has shaped the play and helped to change your perception of it?
So much. Specifically with Snake Eye John, when I wrote the character, I was gunning for kind of like, an omnipotent or omnipotent, excuse me, you can pronounce it either way, kind of character. I wasn't sure if he was the devil. I wasn't sure if he was some sort of ancient spirit. To be completely frank, I still don't know what the hell he is. But it was really cool. I think for me, that was one of the best aspects of this, was seeing that character come to life. And Charlie did a fantastic job with that. Yeah, that was definitely interesting.
Yeah, that is another question that I had, was who the heck even is Snake Eye John? Like we still don't know.
Yeah,
he benefits from the he could really be any kind of force motif. He could, depending on where you set it or where it's set, I suppose, any kind of mythological creature that is a deal maker, right? Like there's plenty of those.
The amount of times in chat during rehearsals when I texted Sebastian, "Oh my God, he's a fey creature." That's why he's trying to make a deal. It happened so many times just because that's what I was convinced he was. But what he said, like he could be anything, which I think is one of them.
Me, like I am like a huge like theater history nerd and just like mythology kind of thing. And I was like digging into myths. I was like, there's threes everywhere. And like just like all these other things. And I love when the world of a play just kind of fits so neatly together. And I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
I think the primary thing to take out of the play is don't make deals with strange men.
Yeah.
Especially if they're offering you things in 3.
Yeah.
3 mysterious glasses of moonshine.
Yeah.
I'll switch gears and ask Reagan, what was the easiest and hardest aspects about bringing this play to life?
I think the easiest aspect was the world that was already built for me. I remember initially reading this play, and it so much reminded me of a Tracy Letts play where all of this world building is put together and everything kind of just falls neatly in place the more you dig for it. It's not up on the surface, but the more you dig for it, the more things start to make sense. And so while working through it, it just all kind of fit together. And then for me, the most difficult part, I think, was also trying to bring this world justice. I think that you are set so far in the future in the Deep South. And in my mind, I was like, well, what place wouldn't change in 50 years? And I was like, probably the Deep South. So that's why we kept the accents kind of same, a little bit more ambiguous with the accents. And I think just working through it, I'd love to see this play put on again, explored more off screen and on. I think it's really great.
And how rewarding was it to work on this brand new piece of theater?
Oh God, it was so rewarding. You guys can even attest to times in the rehearsal, I was just like throwing papers, like flailing my arms, like, yes, that's it. Because when you read a play that maybe has been produced a bunch of times, or it's a play that you've seen right before, maybe you've read it in class, or maybe you've read it a couple times, or the playwright, you start to kind of guess. Like you kind of like, okay, like I've read this before, I know where it's going to go. I've seen so-and-so play this role, so maybe we'll do it like them. But with this, you kind of have a blank slate. And I think that's one of the most like rewarding, exciting things about it.
Excellent. Olivia and Callie, how excited were you to play around with this world that is completely brand new?
I think that there was a text chain when me and Callie first started working on design stuff where it was just like, Callie, we get to do future cowboys, do Western, but we also get to do like, because to me, at least I'm coming into this as a costume designer who's also trying to branch out into other things. So that's where I always start with costumes. And so I was working on another project that's very Western themed, and then I started working on this, and it's like even just seeing like differences between that and this and how brand new this is, despite being a genre that's so developed and kind of, I guess, like raked through. Like, how many times has the Western motif been done? It's been done so many times, but reading this and having it be brand new and no one has touched it and no one has done anything with it, it was so exciting to just be the first one to get to do something super duper cool with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially with like, given like the circumstances of the platform that we have to use, you know, I think even though it is like perceived as a negative, I think for us, in a sense, it turned out to be a positive, and we didn't even expect that it was going to happen this way. Just like having the opportunities to like learn and like do a bunch of like online like light programming and stuff like that, or if we could have actually staged this production, you know, and like rather than online, and just like having all of these different resources to do these things in a slightly different way than we normally would is just like a cherry on top. It's just like some bonus points, like they're extra, more things to learn. Like it's just like you keep learning, you keep, you know, learning new things and exploring, and yeah, that's just.
I feel like me and Callie both did a lot of growth as designers during this.
Yes.
Because we were doing stuff that both of us had never done before, but we were both excited to get involved in. And so we both wanted to learn, and so we did our best to figure stuff out, which I think is what theater is all about. Is just throwing yourself in there with an optimistic attitude and then going, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it now because I have to.
Exactly.
So,
yeah,
and it was exciting.
From that background, you know, like you can still apply your ideas and your thoughts and, you know, hard work to that sort of field and like have it be magic. Like, and also this play set us up perfectly. It was just magic to begin with. So we were already pretty set off.
Yeah.
Great from the beginning.
Now might actually be a good time to look at the renderings, if you guys want to talk about those a little bit.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so we started with the set, which I don't exactly remember the script description of the set, but I remember it saying that there were heavy curtains. And so I came up with this idea of doing like black velvety curtains surrounding like an old diner booth, which they kind of feel like contradictory to each other. Like it's not something that you would expect to see, but I felt like it really fit the vibe of the play. And then I also was trying to figure out what experimental seating would look like, because it's never described as anything but experimental seating. So the fact that we're on screens, I kept thinking about those privacy tents that they gave us in elementary school. How they were to keep us from cheating on tests or something. So I said, I think it would be really cool to have an old leather booth with like a privacy tent basically made out of computer screens and then surrounded by black velvety curtains. I just think that image is super interesting and kind of gives you a feeling of a space without describing it completely for you. It kind of lets the audience still have some imagination around everything. And that was, I mean, the script really gives you a lot of range with the set for this. So it was just a matter of kind of filling in the world that they're sitting in for that. So
yeah, and the script gives a lot of leeway too. Like it could be very, you know, and this is Sebastian's just awesome writing. It could be very, you know, abstract in a sense of depending on the director's perspective. But this is just, I mean, Liv and I on the same brain, just like this is, you know, if we could have put it on the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I think that we were on a Zoom call talking about set like 2 weeks ago or something. And I said, Callie, what are those things that we used to use in elementary school that were like they were like 3 folds, but they like were little tiny ones that kept you from seeing other kids' work. And I think we scoured the internet for 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes trying to find a picture of one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I think we also have the costume renderings, right?
yeah, we have some lighting stuff and then sound and costumes. Yeah. So the only actual written lighting cues in the show are that it should look like light is coming from a computer screen. So that was one of them. So I wanted to make sure that if this were actually to be put on stage, there would be some sort of lighting there to make it look like they're sitting in front of a computer screen. And then later on, I'm going to show you, it actually says in the script that there should be flashes from the inside of Snake-Eyed John's glasses. So I actually have a rendering of that with costumes, since it's kind of a worn prop / costume / lighting effect. And then if we go to the next slide, actually, the way that I imagine diner lighting is lighting that's like yellow fluorescence that everybody looks sick. That's my experience with diners.
I'm pretty sure you said diner lighting and almost even like hospital lighting at some point, you said too. Like just like the sick, pale, just like gross yellow color.
Yeah. So I have it really heavily backlit and really lightly side lit so that it almost kind of looks like a silhouette, but then the screen light is showing people's faces, which I thought was more interesting than just having like overhead lighting where you can see everyone. I think it adds more dimension to the characters and to the stage. And this is my first time doing lighting, so it was interesting to learn all of this. Yeah, and then if we go to the next page, we had talked about Western music playing in the background. And actually, the first or second week of rehearsal, I played this song that I had found on Free Music Archive, which is a great source for free, non-copyrighted music, by this guy named Lobo Loco, who writes hundreds and hundreds of Western-themed music. And this is kind of what I was imagining playing under the whole show. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to hear it if you click on the link at the bottom.
No, that link does not work, unfortunately, in this.
Okay.
Moment.
That's sad because that's a really fun song, but you know the title and the artist, so if I would suggest everyone go listen to it because it's a super good composition piece. And then we can go to the costume renderings then. So for Jeremiah, me and Reagan were talking about this kind of innocence that we felt from his character, and the only costume description, once again, Sebastian being very giving to designers by only giving slight descriptions, just said he's wearing a gray worn ball cap. And so I was like, we have to make sure that that's in there. And then I actually chatted Reagan and Sebastian during a rehearsal saying, would it be crazy to put him in overalls? Would it be crazy to put him in overalls? Because when I think of overalls, I think of innocence immediately. Like there's a childlike sense to wearing overalls, and especially even in what I've put him in, which is like just like work overalls, which are for adults who do manual labor. And then pairing that with a hoodie and Converse, I just felt like it really encompassed him as a character and who he is. And then you can see my rendering on the next slide, which is just... I'm not the best facial drawer, but I tried my best to give him an innocent look. So that's him. And then for his makeup, which is on the next bit, so the makeup is on the next slide. Yeah. I kind of wanted to make it look like he was on the run, either towards something or away from something. So I wanted to just have him have a little bit of dirt on his face. I think that also adds to the innocence of him. And then we got to do Snake-Eyed John, which was probably the character I was the most excited to design. Because he was described as being in all black cowboy attire. I think that's the exact wording from the script. And I read that and I got super excited. And so I put him in this black duster with leather gloves and a black, I think that's a Stetson hat, I'm not sure. And a black bandana, and just everything is black. And I described him as, I wanted him to look like he was coming out of like a really cool antique store. So, and you can see his glasses at the bottom left. And then on the next page, there's, I believe, the makeup, or it's going to be the glasses. Yeah, that's the rendering I had, which is based on Charlie, who did an awesome job. And then the next page is actually the lighting fixture inside the glasses. So I wanted to put LED lighting actually in a set of glasses so that they could be remote controlled, so that when it says that they flash, you'd get the effect of it kind of being like a UFO almost effect around his eyes without hurting his eyes. And then for his makeup, which you actually kind of got to see in the performance, which would be on the next slide, is since we couldn't have contacts, because it says in the script that he has like either snake eyes, but they're mostly described as cat eye lenses, we came up with this inner corner extension and outer corner extension to really give him like a snake-like look without having those contacts. So he was really cool to work on. And then we had stiff-legged Susie, who I kind of wanted to base off of like a 1950s, 60s waitress, but make it green, because I don't think I've ever seen a waitress in a green costume, and Joanna and Reagan both had talked about how they love the color green, so I wanted to throw something in there for them. So my rendering on the next page shows that color, and honestly, she's not in this show for long enough. It's my one quarrel with it, because she really is, I think, the most relatable character in the show. So I wanted to show that through her costume.
Oh, come on, Sebastian. You got to write her in more.
Oh, I need room for a sequel, don't I?
Yeah, true. That's true. Never mind. Write another one. So yeah, that's her. And then I believe might be one more slide, but I don't quite remember. Oh yeah, her makeup. So I wanted her to have this big, messy top bun and just like light work makeup, like just like woke up and put something on and went to work, because that's the vibe I get from that character, and especially from Joanna's portrayal of her. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much, props. Sorry. And then, so we talked about the gun and the bullets, and that pretty much I just wanted to be pretty classic looking. I didn't want to do too much with those items, because I don't think you need to overcomplicate a gun.
Yeah.
You know what it does.
Staying within the realm of like the Western. So like obviously a typical revolver with the like those old like
clips.
Yeah, those old like typical long like bullets that fit in there.
Yeah. And then I actually had the idea I wanted to do 3 different shapes of shot glass. Because to me, if this is a creature trying to make a deal, the way that I imagined it was the shots were like, this is one part of it, and this is another part of it, and this is another part of it, and I can't finish my deal unless you finish all 3. So I liked the idea of him having 3 different shot glasses, and obviously a whiskey glass for Snake-Eyed John, because he's sipping from that basically the whole show, and just having something kind of Art Deco-y looking and combining different eras also felt right for this. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Olivia. That was very detailed.
thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the conversation about the screenplays. My name is Max Kreis, and I served as the dramaturg for The Right Solution. And I am joined here today by our lovely director, playwright, and production designer. All right, so to get into the questions, my first one is for Alexis, who's our playwright. What inspired you to write this play?
Well, when I was first trying to think of ideas for what to write about, the first two that came up with, I feel like had been done to death over in a digital format, which was School Project and then Horror Story, and those two are always done. So I was really trying to think of something different. And then I remembered back when this all started, my friend telling me that she had to convert her therapy sessions to being over Zoom. And I thought, oh, that might be a really cool concept. And also because I tend to serve as a therapist advice giver for all of my friends. So I thought writing this might be able to help get the advice that I usually just give to such a close circle to a more open circle, just to help more people through that way.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, and your play was definitely interesting. I really enjoyed working on it. Next question is for Heather, our director. I have worked with you before as a director, and this play was different for multiple reasons. It was a new play and it was a virtual play. So how did that change your process in directing, or how did that change what you might normally do as a director?
It changed a lot because along with rehearsal of working on the piece itself and making sure my actors are prepared and we get a deep dive into the story, I also had to deal with technical issues throughout the entire process. We had many of them, so learning how to do that and go with the flow in a way when it comes to technology was definitely a challenge. And it was also really cool to work with a playwright for once and actually ask the playwright the question. So I have the playwright's idea instead of trying to predict what the playwright would think or what their intention was. And so it was really cool to be able to work with the playwright firsthand and have them in the rehearsal process and to experience it and to see it firsthand.
All right, awesome. Next question is for Kirsten, our production designer. What did you find most interesting about working on this play? And I know that you have a slide, so if you want to share that, that'd be great.
I do have slides that I can share. So I found most interesting was to be able to dive into these characters, but also get the perspective from the playwright and the director as to how they saw the characters. It wasn't just what I thought might work, because actually originally what I thought for Allie, but both Alexis and Heather were like, no, that's not what we were thinking. I was like, cool, I can start over. I can do this. So we settled on, for Dr. Kirsten Marquez, a blazer with some sort of light pattern in it. I don't know if that came across in the camera or not. And I originally wanted to go for one of those greens that are on the top, but we didn't have any that we could pull, and we couldn't find any that were within budget. So we settled on the gray blazer and the yellow scarf, which actually worked out really well because as I was imagining the rest of the world of the play, those were actually going to be the colors of the office that Dr. Kirsten Marquez had. So that was fun to see that come back to full circle. And then for Allie, I thought that it would be kind of fun to do a hipster thrift store kind of vibe for her, and everybody else was on board, and I think it worked out really well, with the mismatched patterns and colors. I think it worked for her character.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that your designs came across really well. Maybe it didn't end up perfect at what you had planned, but I think that everything that was put on screen looked really good. So thank you for your work in that. All right, thank you so much for that slide as well. Back to Alexis. What did you learn about the play through the rehearsal process with actors?
The actors definitely helped make the play for me, because throughout the rehearsal process, I was really surprised by how much they had been thinking about their characters and like going deeper into like details like that happened before the play of just about like their characters' lives. And they really touched on things that I didn't even think about. So I really think that that helped make the play more like well-rounded and like deep. And so that was really surprising for me. And I really enjoyed being a part of that process, just seeing my work grow through how other people thought about it.
Awesome. All right. So it wasn't like weird for you to see your play be performed by actors and like having people dissect it. Was that weird for you, or was it like interesting?
At first, it was like a little weird because this is like my first time being a part of a process like this. So at first it was just kind of like, oh, like people are like actually thinking about my words. But the more that it went on, I really liked what they had been thinking about. So I was like completely on board with all of their ideas. So it was weird at first, but as the rehearsal process kept going, I like got really used to it and I was actually really enjoying it. So.
Cool. All right. Thank you. All right. Back down to Heather. What are you hoping an audience could take away from this play?
I'm hoping an audience can realize that a lot of people go through the same things, and even though you may not see it, it's true, and that it's okay to talk about it and be open about it and to ask for help when needed, and to realize that we are all human beings and we're just trying to get through every day.
Yeah. Alexis as well, just to hop back to you. Do you agree with Heather on that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Awesome.
I definitely, yeah.
Amazing. So cool. All right. And Kirsten, what did you find most challenging about this design process?
The most challenging was finding the personalities of the characters and then trying to match that with what they were wearing. So I had a couple of conversations with both Heather and Alexis as to how they felt these characters should come across, and we kind of just ran from there.
All right. That wraps up the questions that I have prepared. So thank you guys so much for being here today with me. And thank you to our audience and our viewers for joining us today and being a part of our conversation about the screenplays. All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.